I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask why. The day I learned my wife's secret, I simply started planning, and by the time she realized, I was already gone. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by again. I've got a new story to put out there, so let's get right into it. I still can't decide what hit me harder, realizing I had failed as a husband or facing the fact that I had fallen short as a father. I couldn't tell if what I was feeling was depression or just pure, burning anger. Honestly, saying I was confused doesn't even scratch the surface. I had spent nearly my entire adult life working toward one goal, giving my family the kind of future I never had. I thought I was doing it right, building them a life filled with comfort and security. But now, looking back, I see that all I really gave them were material things and a bank account that never ran dry. And in the end, that wasn't what they truly needed from me. Somewhere along the way, I'd become little more than a provider, the guy who kept the well full so everyone else could drink from it. I loved my wife. I loved my kids. Please note, I'm speaking in the past tense for a reason. I co-owned a business, or I guess I should say Jason Miller and I co-owned it. Jason and I had been inseparable since we were kids in elementary school. We grew up side by side, went to the same vocational program after high school, and eventually started our own company together. Neither of us expected it to take off the way it did, but it did, and then some. A few years into running the business, we both married our high school sweethearts. Jason married Laura and I married Allison. For the first 15 years, life felt like it was moving in the right direction. The company thrived, we paid ourselves more than decent salaries, and before long, we had over 30 full-time employees working under us. We'd built something from nothing and we were proud of it. Jason and Laura had 3 boys. Allison and I had twins, a son and a daughter. We lived in that middle to upper class bubble that so many people dream about. Large suburban homes, dinners at nice restaurants, regular family vacations, and the kind of cars that made neighbors curious. Jason and I were both laser-focused on keeping the business strong. We believed that our customer satisfaction always came first, even if it occasionally meant our employees weren't thrilled about certain decisions. That said, we still had a loyal, tight-knit crew. In fact, about a third of our team were former inmates we'd hired through a prison vocational program. In 8 years, only 2 hires had caused real problems, and, to be honest, their fellow ex-cons handled the situation themselves pretty quickly. Most of them were determined to rebuild their lives, and they weren't about to let anyone jeopardize that. Outside of work, we were involved in the community. We sponsored youth programs, backed local events, and even put our names on the jerseys of a neighborhood softball team. But my home life, that was a different story entirely. Somewhere along the way, Allison started throwing herself headfirst into progressive social causes, and that's where the cracks in our marriage began to show. I never really cared much for the causes Allison got involved in, but I let her have her space, the same way she'd always let me focus on my own interests. For years, politics never even made it to the dinner table, it just wasn't part of our marriage. Then, seemingly overnight, it became the thing that defined every conversation. Suddenly, every meal turned into a debate, and every quiet moment turned into an argument. I tried to step back, to disengage, hoping that if I didn't feed into it, it would blow over. But the less I said, the louder she seemed to get. It felt like living in a house where CNN and Fox News were blaring at full volume, both at the same time, and neither of them could be turned off. Eventually, I just started avoiding her altogether, but even that turned into another fight. And as my relationship with Allison started to fray, so did my connection with my kids. For years, I tried to bond with my son Jacob. Sports, hiking, hunting, fishing. It didn't matter to me what we did as long as we did something together. But Jacob's idea of a good time was sitting in front of a TV with a controller in his hand, lost in whatever game he was playing. Later, I found out he'd also started smoking weed on occasion. Every time I tried to get him to join me in something outdoors, I got a flat no. When I finally confronted Allison about it, she told me to just leave him alone and mind my own business. And the way Jacob would smirk at me when she said it, that smirk alone made my blood pressure spike. My daughter Jordan had once been my little girl, the one who'd light up when I walked in the room. Now she barely looked in my direction. She had more piercings than I could count and, despite being on birth control, had already been treated for gonorrhea twice. She threw herself into rallies and social events with her mother but wouldn't even come along if I offered to take her out for something simple like pizza or ice cream. Eventually I stopped asking. The distance between us all grew even wider when Allison asked me to donate company funds to one of her projects, a needle exchange program for drug users. I told her I couldn't justify putting business money into that, and she didn't say a single word to me for a week. I thought that was bad, but I had no idea just how much worse things were about to get. The company's annual Christmas party was coming up. As always, Jason and I left the planning to our wives. Myra jumped in with her usual enthusiasm, and she pulled Allison along for the ride, though Allison's help was minimal at best. Lately, she had been going out more and more, taking overnight trips for protests, rallies, and seminars. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something shifting. After a while, I just stopped asking Allison where she was going or why she was gone so often. It didn't seem to matter anymore. Meanwhile, Jacob had moved past smoking weed and started experimenting with pills, and Jordan had taken to posting personal vlogs online, the kind that made me wonder if she understood how permanent the internet really is. When the Christmas party finally rolled around, everything seemed to be going smoothly. We kept it simple, beer and wine only, no hard liquor. And with the promise of the generous year-end bonuses we always handed out, every single employee showed up. Allison and the kids were there, but they kept to themselves. They smiled politely when spoken to, but otherwise stayed at a distance. The gap between us was so obvious that I'm sure others noticed. At one point, Jason walked over to me, his voice low and serious. "John, I need a word with you." I tried to keep my tone casual. "What's going on?" He hesitated for a second, glancing toward the crowd. "Jorge Martinez needs to speak with you, but he's a little nervous." Jorge had been with our company for 6 years, one of the men we'd hired through the prison program. He was steady, reliable, the kind of guy you could trust to do his job without being babysat. So if he was nervous about talking to me, that got my attention. "What's he worried about?" I asked. Jason shook his head. "He doesn't want to ruin the party. But he says it's something you need to hear." A heaviness settled in my stomach, the kind that told me I wasn't going to like whatever came next. "All right," I said quietly. "Bring him over." A moment later, Jorge approached with his wife, Elena, at his side. They both looked uneasy. I forced a small smile, trying to put them at ease. Jason slipped away to give us privacy. "Mr. Terrell," Jorge began, his voice uncertain, "we don't want to stir up trouble, but my wife saw something today and she thought you should know." I tried to talk her out of bringing it up tonight, but she wouldn't let it go. I turned to Elena and gave her a small nod, signaling that it was all right to speak. She gave Jorge a gentle nudge and he continued. "Elena works at the Hampton Inn," he explained. "She's been on the cleaning staff there for 2 years, she's in charge of the 5th floor." Something inside me tightened, a knot in my gut I couldn't untangle. "For the past year," Jorge said carefully, "your wife, and a man named Kyle Franklin, have been using room 511. Once or twice a week. They never stay long, maybe 2-3 hours at the most. But it's always the same room." Silence. 100 questions fought to the front of my mind, but this wasn't the place for any of them. Jorge's face was tense, bracing for my reaction, while Elena looked almost relieved to have finally said it out loud. I reached out and took Jorge's hand in both of mine, looking him straight in the eye. "Thank you," I said quietly. He let out a breath he'd been holding, and Elena gave me a small, sympathetic nod. Without another word, I gestured for them to head back to the party, masking the storm that had just started inside me. I turned away from Jorge and Elena, my mind still processing what I'd just heard. As I passed Jason, I muttered, "Give Jorge a raise next month." It was the least I could do. Kyle Franklin. The name didn't mean much at first, but I knew who he was. He ran the city's parking department, a career bureaucrat with bigger dreams of becoming mayor one day. His wife, Nora Franklin, was well known in her own right, a savvy, sharp-tongued businesswoman who owned one of the county's largest real estate firms. Her face was practically unavoidable, plastered across billboards and bus ads all over town. I often wondered if she got a bulk discount on all that ad space. That night, Allison scolded me for leaving the Christmas party early. The kids chimed in, piling on with complaints about how I'd ruined the evening. I didn't argue. I just smiled faintly, picked up my book, and lost myself in the words of Mickey Spillane, proof that good storytelling holds up even after 70 years. By Monday morning, I was sitting in the reception area of Franklin Real Estate, a hot cup of coffee in hand. I'd come ready for what I imagined would be the big kill, a dramatic confrontation where I revealed everything I knew. At exactly 10 a.m., Nora Franklin swept into the lobby. She froze when she saw me, her eyes narrowing and a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "I was wondering when you'd show up, Mr. Terrell," she said. "Took you long enough." So much for my big surprise. I followed her into her office, still holding my coffee. "I suppose when you own the company you can stroll in whenever you like," I said. She sat behind her desk, clearly amused. "John? May I call you John?" I nodded. Well then, John, she continued, leaning back in her chair, let's talk. I'm not here to rehash all the drama. I just want to know what you plan on doing. I have a lot of questions and frankly, I don't want you to mess things up. That threw me off. I'd expected shock, maybe even outrage. Instead, she was calm, almost businesslike. Mrs. Franklin. Nora, she interrupted. All right, Nora, it seems I'm way behind on all of this. I didn't even know anything was going on until a friend told me recently. I have no idea what to do next, and to be honest, I haven't had anyone to talk to about it. I figured you were in the dark, same as me. Her smirk deepened. John, I've known about this for more than 6 months. I probably should have reached out sooner, but I had my hands full. And I didn't want you flying off the handle and making a spectacle of yourself. What do you mean by that? I asked. Oh, you know, she said, waving a hand casually, doing something dramatic. Playing the tough guy with Kyle in public. Maybe confronting them in some grand scene. It's hard to predict what men will do when their pride's been bruised. Especially the macho ones. Nora leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but deliberate. I think it'll be far more effective if you handle this with a level head. I gave a faint chuckle. I've never really thought of myself as the macho type, I said. But, all right. So what are your plans? And how exactly can you help me? She tilted her head, studying me. I leaned back in my chair, took a long breath and admitted, I think we're going to need some time. And time we took. Over the next 2 weeks, Nora Franklin and I developed an unlikely friendship. She was sharp, sharper than I'd realized. Over the past few months, she had been quietly setting her husband up for a fall, brick by brick. The IRS had taken a sudden interest in his finances, thanks to a few breadcrumbs she'd left lying in plain sight. She had kept her own personal and business accounts completely separate from his, a clean escape hatch in case things blew up. Meanwhile, the state prosecutor had started digging into Kyle's habit of diverting funds from road construction and transportation projects into, well, let's just say, other uses that weren't exactly public knowledge. The city was also investigating his use of municipal funds to cover hotel rooms and restaurant tabs, the very same ones I assumed where he and Allison had been meeting. What impressed me most wasn't just the depth of her work, it was how she'd gotten all of these agencies to move in sync, their investigations converging like she was conducting an orchestra. The problem was, none of it directly helped my situation. No matter what happened to Kyle Franklin, I was still stuck with a crumbling marriage and a family that felt more like strangers. Still, Nora floated an idea that caught my attention, an exit plan she'd been working on that involved selling her real estate business. It got me thinking I could do something similar with my own life. My biggest hurdle was my home. My family. Or what was left of it. I no longer had any real connection with Allison or the kids, and the business I loved felt like it was holding me in place. Leaving it behind wasn't what I wanted, but I knew it might be necessary. Nora had a solution. About a month later, I made an announcement over dinner. We were moving to a new house. Allison's eyes lit up instantly. The kids? Not so much. Jacob groaned. Jordan rolled her eyes. They liked the house we had. Then I mentioned that the new place had a pool. Suddenly, Jordan was interested. And when Jacob heard about the 3-car garage, he perked up too. We drove out to see it the following weekend. It was enormous, easily twice the size of our current home and priced at more than double. Each kid would have their own bathroom. Allison took one look at the place and immediately commented that we didn't own enough furniture to fill it. But when I told her she could pick out all new pieces, her expression softened into approval. Allison's enthusiasm really took off when she stepped into the kitchen. A full, professional setup with every upgrade you could imagine. To top it off, I told them that once we moved, we'd all be getting brand new cars for the first time in years. For a moment, I played the role of the perfect husband and father, and they were eating it up. Nora, true to form, handled the housing search like it was second nature. In just 2 days, she had found the perfect place, drawn up all the paperwork and had everything ready for signatures. When I told Allison that Franklin Real Estate would be managing the deal, I caught a slight flicker in her expression, a quick wince, but she smoothed it over almost immediately. Nora had already lined up a cash buyer for our current home. I couldn't help but find the next scene, almost surreal. My wife and my wife's lover's wife sitting across from each other at the same table, both of them focused on the papers in front of them. No fake smiles. No forced chit-chat. Just business. The first set of documents was for the sale of our old house. Allison and I signed everything without hesitation, and Nora had it notarized on the spot. We cleared $450,000 from the sale, which we immediately transferred into an electronic account. Allison looked pleased with herself, not paying much attention to the finer points. She just signed wherever Nora indicated. Then came the paperwork for the new house. Allison's face lit up when she heard Nora announce the price, $900,000. She beamed again when I casually mentioned that I'd be putting the new home in her name, for tax purposes. She thought it was a brilliant idea. What she didn't realize was that she wasn't signing a purchase agreement at all. It was an option to purchase. If she'd bothered to read the fine print, she would have noticed that the option lasted 120 days. If the purchase wasn't finalized within that time frame, the price would jump to $1 million, and the $40,000 option fee would be forfeited. I wasn't looking to throw away money, but in the grand scheme of things I knew this was worth it. Once everything was signed and notarized, Nora handed Allison the keys with a warm, professional smile, congratulating her on her new home. She made it sound completely sincere. I almost lost it right there. It took everything I had not to burst out laughing. Allison, on the other hand, was simmering the whole drive back. She clearly hadn't expected me to actually go through with putting the house in her name. What Allison also didn't see coming was the $10,000 gift card I handed her for one of the high-end furniture stores in town. I told her it was for making the new place feel like home. In my mind, it was just another calculated investment. Sometimes you have to spend a little money to set the stage for a much bigger payoff. The very next day was car day. Jacob, true to form, went straight for the Mustang I knew he'd pick. Jordan, however, caught everyone off guard by choosing a bright, lime green Kia, a car so loud it practically announced her arrival from a mile away. Allison picked out a sleek, white Lexus without a second thought. I took the opportunity to give both kids a little speech about the importance of establishing credit. They nodded like they understood, which made it that much easier to put both cars in their names, fully financed, of course. Naturally, someone would have to make the payments. They just hadn't worked out who that would be yet. I applied the same strategy to Allison's new Lexus. All three cars were insured for 90 days, just enough to keep them rolling without committing me to a long-term bill. My total out-of-pocket cost for all three vehicles came to just under $600, most of it for tags and titles. Another small, smart investment on my part. A week later we moved into the new house. By now, Nora and I were spending time together almost daily. Some days I'd lend her a hand with a project she was managing. Other days she'd help me fine-tune one of my own. The more we worked side by side, the more natural it felt, like we'd been planning things together for years. Jason had the welding business under control, and Nora's real estate office was fully staffed, which freed both of us to focus on one thing: ending our marriages. For Nora, the plan was straightforward. She was going to wait until Kyle was officially charged by one of the agencies digging into him. She didn't know whether it would be the IRS, the state, or the city who got to him first, but she didn't seem to care. In her eyes, the outcome would be the same. My own situation was a little different. Somewhere along the line, I decided I didn't want a divorce. Not because I was holding out hope for reconciliation, that ship had sailed, but because I had too much to lose in a legal split. Still, I knew something had to change. I just wanted the whole mess wrapped up as quickly as possible. Once again, Nora had an idea. "John," she asked one afternoon, "have you ever been to Aruba?" "Only once," I told her. "Stopped there during a cruise, but I never stayed overnight." "Did you like it?" I shrugged. "Didn't spend enough time there to know." Her eyes sparkled with the hint of a plan. "I've got an opportunity to buy a condo in West Aristotle for $1 million. Would you be interested in something like that?" I leaned back, considering it. "That might be a little tricky for me." "I probably don't need anything that complicated," I told her. Nora gave a small shrug. "I was thinking we could split it. 50-50. I'm sure you could swing it." "I'm sure I could," I said, "but you're more than capable of handling something like this on your own. Why even bring me in?" She smiled knowingly. "Consider it a partnership, an investment if you will. I like to think of myself as a savvy businesswoman, and part of being savvy is using other people's money when it makes sense. Besides," she paused, "I enjoy your company, but I won't be around forever. When I leave, it'll all be in your hands, you'll own it outright and you'll make all the decisions. Just call me once in a while for advice." I smirked. "Ah, I see," said the blind man. "And I suppose these calls would come with a consultation fee?" She laughed lightly. "Think of it as a lifetime annuity. Don't overthink it. Just make things easier for yourself." Our company lawyer drew up the necessary paperwork. Jason and Myra expressed a little concern, wondering if I was maybe going too far with whatever it was I was doing. But I reassured them, everything was under control. It felt good to have at least one person I could trust through all of this. Funny thing is, I never bothered to gather proof of Allison's affair with Kyle. No photos. No text messages. No incriminating emails. I didn't need them, because I had no intention of filing for divorce. My plan was simpler, though far less conventional. I was going to do what 21% of absentee fathers do, just walk away. 2 weeks later, Kyle Franklin was arrested. I never even found out which agency had gotten to him first. He wasn't some master criminal or high-stakes embezzler, just a small-time civil servant who kept dipping into the wrong pockets and, on top of that, had made the mistake of sleeping with my wife. By the time the story broke, Nora and I had already gone our separate ways, at least in the public eye. She had sold off her real estate company, along with 32 rental properties and 3 apartment buildings. She was financially set for her next chapter. Privately, she referred to me as her designated boy toy, and I never took offense. In fact, I think we grew closer once we finally got to Aruba. There was no dating phase, no awkward small talk. It was as if the entire thing had been arranged months in advance. And the truth? I didn't miss my kids. Not even a little. Does that make me a bad father? Maybe. But given the circumstances, I'm not sure I care anymore. No, I didn't miss my wife either. Does that make me a bad husband? I don't think so. Nora had thrown herself into golf. She played 3 days a week with a steady circle of women who were just as devoted to the sport as she was. Every so often we'd join them, along with a dozen or so other former players, for social dinners or drinks. I slipped into that rhythm surprisingly easily. It was a different kind of life, carefree, unhurried, and, to my surprise, genuinely enjoyable. While she had her golf, I decided to finally try something I'd always wanted to do: painting. Each morning, I'd walk down to the docks with an easel and a small case of paints, setting up in the early light. I wasn't particularly skilled and I knew it. Most days I'd come back to the apartment, look at what I'd done, and scrape every bit of paint off the canvas so I could start fresh the next day. 3 months passed and I still had nothing to show for it, but Nora found the whole process endlessly amusing. I kept my distance from most people, but eventually I felt I should call Jason. "John," he said the moment he picked up, "about time. I was starting to think you'd vanished. Are you settled in?" "Settled in and feeling better than I have in years," I told him. Honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. For the next 10 minutes, I painted him a picture of my new life in Aruba. The slow mornings, the quiet evenings, the complete absence of stress. It didn't take much to convince him that he and Myra should come down for a week or 2. Things were good. Really good. Jason apologized for not sending any consultation checks, but I reminded him I'd never given him an address or a bank account number. Truth was, I didn't need the money. Still, I hesitated before bringing up the subject I'd been avoiding. "Terry, I hate to even ask, but can you tell me what's going on with my wife and the kids?" He sighed. "I don't have the full picture, but I can tell you what I know. Things aren't going well without you. First off, Jacob got himself arrested. They caught him with 3 kilos of fentanyl in the trunk of his car. The car's gone, confiscated, and since he's over 18, he's sitting in county jail. Allison couldn't bail him out even if she wanted to." I let out a slow breath. "That's sad to hear. I know I'm his father, but honestly, I don't care what happens to him anymore. I tried. I failed. There's nothing left to do." Jason hesitated before continuing. "Jordan's situation isn't much better. Not long after moving into the new house," Jason continued, "Jordan doubled her activity on that website of hers. From what I've heard, she's picked up quite a few followers. Then one day she told Allison she was heading to California to meet some producer she'd been talking to. 2 weeks later, her lime green Kia turned up abandoned in Memphis. Since then, Allison hasn't heard a single word from her. No calls, no messages, nothing." "I take it you get most of this from Allison?" I asked. "Yeah," Jason replied. "She still comes by the office regularly, hoping to run into you. I don't think she believes me when I tell her you're gone for good. She was furious last week when she got the notice about finalizing the option on the house, or vacating it by the end of the month. I've got to hand it to you, John, that was clever. She's completely bewildered right now. I'm not even sure she knows what she's going to do next. I think some of her utilities have already been cut off. She couldn't even pay the electric bill." "Did you help her?" I asked. "Don't be mad," he said quickly. "I gave her $1,000 and told her to use it as a deposit for an apartment. Myra felt sorry for her. But between you and me, I doubt she'll use it for that." I let out a small chuckle. "All right, Jason, I get it. Just take it out of my next payment. Can't her lover help her now?" Jason laughed. He's in worse shape than she is. All I know is what's been on the news. Nothing official yet, but the spicy details keep coming out. My guess? He's going away for a long while. Oh, and before I forget, Allison's car was repossessed. With all her credit cards canceled, she can't even grab a taxi. I've got no idea how she's getting around. We spent a little more time talking about the business and made some preliminary plans for Jason and Myra to visit Aruba. It was an easy conversation. No tension, no hidden barbs. A few days later, I signed up for an online painting course with an instructor from the UK. 2 months into it, one of the guys down at the dock asked if I'd paint his sailboat. I'm still not great at it, but I enjoy the challenge. Nora jokes that she worries I'll end up cutting off my own ear like Van Gogh. Life goes on. Thanks for listening to the end. See you in the next one.